Only recently did I learn that before she was my grandmother, Miss Versie Lee Jackson was a warrior.
Who was I supposed to take some cake from?
I have a piece of cake, Annie.
You want chocolate?
Thank you.
And you say you had some cake?
I was still in high school, attending college-level classes at Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas, when I decided to compete in the Barbara Jordan essay contest. I decided to delve into the news archives of the local Beaumont Enterprise in the hopes of revealing the story of how my grandmother changed the course of civil rights in Texas. Throughout the story of the desegregation of Beaumont, a recurring key figure was Theodore Johns. Theodore Johns and Elma Willard were the principal prosecuting attorneys who represented Versie Jackson.
She was a student at Prairie View, but she wanted to attend school close to her home here in Beaumont, and she saw no reason why she couldn't attend Lamar. They stated that the time was not right for blacks to enter, and they didn't know when the time would be right, but no, the application was denied. Versie Jackson agreed to file a suit, and it certainly had a profound effect all over this area.
Beaumont is a oil refinery town, a seaport. It's an industrial city with a diverse population. Beaumont in the 1950s had a population of 110,000. The black population was 32,000, so about 30%.
It was an area where the patterns of segregation were very strongly entrenched. You have to understand that Lamar was an institution of higher education in East Texas. East Texas had been part of King Cotton, the Cotton Kingdom, and very much in the days of slavery.
They just thought that, well, blacks were inferior, and that inferiority was contagious. They thought it was right, segregation, morally, legally, and otherwise, because they knew no better. They had nowhere to turn but the courts, and most of the courts at the time would rule against us. It was just an uphill fight.
Mr. Johns continues to work in Beaumont, Texas as an attorney at law and magistrate judge. Judge Johns?
Yes.
I'm Versie Jackson's grandson, Chris.
I was proud to represent her, and I'm proud to meet her grandson. Again, I say I'm proud. This business that your grandmother had to endure, that's history that you don't even know anything about it.
I just found out about it recently.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
After the end of the American Civil War and after a Reconstruction period that ended in 1877, there was growing discrimination and segregation against African Americans, especially in the American South. There was the famous case in 1896 which laid the legal groundwork for the Jim Crow caste system. Plessy versus Ferguson was a railroad case in Louisiana. There was to be a white car and a black car, and the Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal was constitutional.
In South Africa, this would be called apartheid, separate development. Here, it's just called the separate but equal doctrine.
The segregation system was strong in Beaumont. Lamar College was in an all-white neighborhood, and there were black residential areas, white residential areas, separate restaurants, restrooms, drinking fountains.
That was a time blacks were not allowed to use the libraries, the parks.
African Americans were barred from almost all parts of society, except they were welcome to work there as waiters and janitors and that sort of thing. There was a white world and a black world, and the African Americans were caught trying to live in both.
The landmark decision then is the decision involving a Houston African American named Heman Sweat, who had applied to the University of Texas Law School in 1946. This guy was as qualified as anyone, but his color made it impossible for him to go there.
I heard the Attorney General make the argument if Sweat would enter the University of Texas, blood would flow in the street. That was his argument, but he was unsuccessful.
The court then looked at it in 1950. It basically said, look, if you don't have truly equal accommodations for other races that you're going to discriminate against and separate out, then you have to permit them to go to the one institution you do have. That was the argument in Sweat, and it really is the decision that paves the way to Brown versus Board of Ed.
And then in 1954, the Supreme Court overturns Plessy versus Ferguson. So after 60 years, separate but equal is no longer constitutional.
Brown versus the Board of Education opened up a lot of avenues. It made it where people knew one another, you know, that everyone was human. I think that that was the most important case of this century, Brown versus Board of Education.
And then that led to a series of cases, African Americans and white Americans using the law, and the courts began to break the segregation system.
Elmo Willard, my partner, who was deceased, we had the law firm Johns and Willard. It was Johns and Willard, and just about every effort, we had our hands full of civil rights cases during those days. But U. Simpson Tate, who was the original NAACP counsel, was on the case.
Tate, Johns, Willard were all coordinating their efforts with the national office headed by Thurgood Marshall, who would later go on to become a Supreme Court justice.
And the law school at Howard was really the key. Charles Hamilton Houston, graduate of Harvard Law School, became the dean at Howard and was responsible for training Thurgood Marshall and many others who participated in these struggles.
I attended law school in Howard University in Washington, D.C. I passed the bar, and at the same time I got my results, I received my greetings to go into the service during the Korean War. I was just getting out of the service when the case came to my attention.
The historians tell us that these men and women who served in the war, they came back, they were different people, they had seen a larger world, and they wanted a better life for themselves.
My grandmother was hesitant to discuss the subject, but I was persistent. Eventually, she agreed to be interviewed. What happened when you first applied?
When I first applied, a lady named Celeste Kitchen told me, said, but y'all won't get in because this is for white folks.
So you had the right to apply even though you knew that?
I had the right to apply.
What was the reaction like on campus when you applied?
It wasn't very friendly. And I always tell my children, I don't care what they call you. I know what I named you, and you know what I named you. If they don't call you that, they ain't talking to you. They can call me nigger, they can call me anything they want. If they don't call me Versie or Miss Jackson, they ain't talking to me, and I just walk on.
What did the other students think?
They thought I was right.
The white students there formed a petition saying that any person, no matter what their race, should be allowed to attend school. So even in the climate of the day, you had some people with courage to come forward.
It was the practice at that time that the names of the plaintiffs and their home addresses was published in the Beaumont Enterprise.
And so all sorts of economic and even physical pressure could be placed on plaintiffs. It really was a very courageous thing to do.
Becoming a plaintiff raised your visibility and made you subject to threats and perhaps violence and perhaps retaliation by employers.
We had threats, bricks thrown through the windows of our office. Yes, it was a different time.
What did your family think at the time?
That I was starting trouble.
So they weren't very supportive of you?
Oh no, they were supportive of me. They just thought that it was going to start a lot of trouble and a lot of black folks would be let out of jobs because of it.
Were you afraid at all of what might happen?
Of what might happen? Oh yes, I was afraid. I had some shoot in my house, and some of them said, well, they're going to fire your husband and so forth and so on. But that didn't matter.
She didn't seem to be any way radical or a revolutionist, just an individual that just wanted to go to college. And I want you to realize, I want everyone to realize that it took a lot of courage for a black, especially a young lady, to challenge the system then.
I've got 8 grandchildren, 8. And I just want them all to go through school so that you can be on your own.
I've never not thought about going to college. It's just been something that's been ingrained in me for as long as I can remember.
In order to boost the morale of the students, I enrolled as a student out to Lamar, and I was on my way out there one night, and we were attacked, surrounded in the automobile. They tried to turn the automobile over. Picketers again halt Negroes at Lamar Tech. Segregation of the school, as we knew it then, was over because we saw fear in their face and defeat.
Do you remember what the courtroom looked like?
Yes, the courtroom was full. And your grandmother wore a yellow dress. I told you that before, remember? And what was the purpose of that yellow dress? Is that I was sure the sun would shine.
Was that your first time ever going to court?
That was my first time in court, and I was just shaky as I could be. People behind me like Ed Sprotts and Elmo Willard and Johns and you Simpson Tate and them, we're here with you. You don't have to be afraid. I'm going to show you today how justice works. That's what he told me. And we went to court, and when we left, I saw how justice worked.
So on July 30th, 1956, Versie Jackson actually gave testimony for her side, and Lamar's president, Florin McDonald, gave testimony for the university. Shepard, the Attorney General, argued, quote, he said, "It is not well for turmoil and discontent to be aroused in a community, nor between the races residing there, by too hasty forcing of a claimed right of 2 puppets dangled before this court by the operators of a national racial organization." Shepard was taking a dig here at Thurgood Marshall and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and was not at all respecting Versie Jackson and Henry Cooper as really legitimate plaintiffs, calling them puppets in this case. It didn't take Judge Cecil more than a few minutes. He came out instantly and said that Versie Jackson and African Americans as a whole had a right to attend Lamar University. In fact, he said that the separate but equal doctrine was no longer in effect, whether we like it or not, and that he would follow the Supreme Court as long as he sat on the federal bench.
Because of their contributions to the community, the city of Beaumont has dedicated libraries to both Theodore Johns and Elmo Willard.
We opened our doors June 6 in 2002, and because they had named the one in the North End after Elmo Willard, they decided to name this one after Mr. Johns to honor him for the things that he had done for Beaumont. My name is Gwendolyn Pierre. I'm the branch manager here at the Theodore Johns Branch Library in Beaumont, Texas.
Many of my family members graduated from Lamar University and continue to work and live in the Beaumont area. Despite their busy lives, the Jackson family always makes time to get together at Grandma Versie's every Sunday for dinner.
Education is very important in this family.
And what did you teach?
I taught science, I taught language arts, I've taught math.
How many teachers in the room?
I teach 7th grade English at Kirby Middle School in Houston, Texas.
Peach MacArthur in Beaumont, Texas.
I teach 2nd grade in Lucas Elementary.
I've been writing.
And do you want me to be a teacher?
I want you to be whatever you want to be, because you can be whatever you want to be, just be the best.
I don't want to be a teacher.
No.
That fall semester of 1956, about 26 African Americans did enroll, and my own mother and father were among that 26. My parents barely shared anything with me at all about the living history that they were a part of in Oping Lamar, a place that I later go to for my master's degree. We haven't shared those stories because the view is to share these kinds of stories is to just sort of fan the flames of division. But I think the greater danger of it going that way is when we don't share the history and we don't share how we can go through these terrible things and can come out the other end better at some point.
Yes, the average person can make a difference. Yes. And that's why her story needs to be told. It needs to be told.
Beaumont is my home. I love it here. I only had one time I wanted to leave Beaumont after we had Rita.
Even after going through the lawsuit and everything that happened, you still wanted to live here and stay in this community?
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing that's made you want to leave is a hurricane?
That's the only thing that's made me want to leave was that hurricane.
Anywhere I go, they'll say, "Where is Miss Jackson?" We remember Miss Jackson. They don't remember anybody else from the church but Miss Versie Jackson.
For me, Versie Lee Jackson is a real hero because it was that kind of courage that helped to make the change that we all enjoy today.
Do you think of yourself as a revolutionary?
No. I love everybody. Everybody loves me. They just have to get to know me.
I could have gone my entire life without knowing the full truth of her story. A simple essay contest prompted me to start digging for the facts.
As a result of Versie Jackson, well, the climate changed. Today is a totally different atmosphere out to Lamar.
My grandmother is a warrior. She fought in a battle to ensure a fair and equal education for all Texans. And she won.